Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. A talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is internationally syndicated solely due to the love and support that you all continue to give. We're available across all major distributors, and as long as you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in, because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Terry Burnett. And we're going to be discussing Terry's incredible novel, The Lost Epistle. Now it's available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a whole host of other places. Man, I'm telling you, do yourself a favor, type it into a search bar, and you're going to be greeted with all of them. And before I go any further, I want to quickly point out the fact that Terry was brought to us by one of the best publishing firms in the business, Author Reputation Press. So for my writers out there, if you've gone through your process creating your masterpiece and now you need some help moving it, well, contact ARP, because they're one of the best movers in the business. Head on over to authorreputationpress.com and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. People, imagine stumbling upon a letter that could shatter 2,000 years of Christian belief, only then to realize powerful forces will probably go to any length, including killing you, just to keep it buried. I mean, that is something that we've seen in movies, we've seen in television shows. This is taken directly from the Hollywood screen, and that is the explosive premise of this book, The Lost Epistle. It is a what if, to say it lightly, a thriller where faith, history, and conspiracy collide. Sit back, strap in, get ready for a roller coaster of a ride, because that is exactly what Terry has in store. Man, I'm looking forward to this one. Terry, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
Benji, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and thank you so much for that great introduction to the book and a really, really warm and heartfelt introduction from me. So thank you very much.
Of course. Well, Terry, listen, man, it's my pleasure. You had to write this amazing book for us to invite you on the network to discuss it. So all praise goes right back to you, man. We appreciate what you've done, and we appreciate you even more for being here with us to discuss it. Let's jump right in, man. I want to know, first and foremost, before we get into this amazing book, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Well, I was a school teacher for a while, and then I went to law school, and I practiced law for a few years, and now I work in continuing legal education with the South Carolina Bar here in Columbia, South Carolina. But I love to read. I love to research. I was a Christian education major in college, and I love all things theological and all things historical, and I love to fish also. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, there you have it. Well, you know, all of this, I was following you, and then you threw out the fishing thing. And I was like, well, you know. But no, listen, fishing is awesome. I love it too. You know, growing up, it was a big pastime for my brothers and I, and it was something that we love to do, and something that I'm looking forward to doing with my children once they become of an appropriate age. Terry, I gotta ask, man, I wasn't planning necessarily to go to inspiration so quickly, but after that background, I guess I can assume and connect the dots. I'm not going to do that to you because I don't want to potentially fall flat on my face here. Your background, you love reading, okay, but your background is in law. Where does creative writing fit into all of this? And then leading to this particular book, The Lost Epistle, what inspired its creation?
So many, many years ago, Benji, I read a book that purported to expose a conspiracy theory about the Knights Templar and the Priory of Zion that hid the secret of the lost bloodline of Jesus. And so it gave me the idea for a book. I began writing this book in the mid-1990s. And it took me years and years and years to research it and write it. But these tensions that I felt when I read this book created for me the idea of a novel that would not really track the conspiracy theory that was proposed in the book itself, but it gave me the idea for something I felt like was much more plausible. And that was the idea that could there exist a manuscript from ancient times, from the beginning of church history, as it were, that might shed some doubt on some of the things that we, or many of us certainly, have held dear for 2,000 years. And that tension seemed to be a really good launching pad for a novel.
Well, listen, I have a lot of other questions, but the most important one to jump into now is, of course, this fantastic book. Tell us a little bit more about it.
So the book proposes the idea that the Apostle Paul, who really is responsible for the spread of the Christian message into the Gentile world, and is also attributed to half of the New Testament. 13 of the 27 books of the New Testament are attributed to the Apostle Paul. Mm-hmm. And so the premise of the book is that at the end of Paul's life, could he have written a letter not to the Christian churches, but to his own Jewish people, admitting to them that because Jesus the Messiah had not returned within his lifetime, which was an expectation during the first century, that maybe he had gotten it wrong about who Jesus was, what he was sent here to do, and whether he was actually the Messiah and the Son of God. That creates a real tension of faith that is not implausible, because ancient manuscripts have been discovered that really vary from some of the books that we call orthodox in the New Testament. There are Gnostic Gospels, and there are other writings that kind of challenge what the Orthodox system believes. And so I created a story where the potential for this manuscript by Paul comes to light, and there are all kinds of interest groups, all kinds of folks with agendas, from secret societies within the Catholic Church to wild-eyed Protestant pastors to theologians and church history professors who want to get their hands on this manuscript for various reasons, some nefarious and some benign, some seekers after truth, and some people who want to suppress the truth because it threatens them. Yeah. And so all of these forces are brought to bear in a kind of a rollicking, good old-fashioned thriller, murder, mystery, adventure, where it's a fun read, it's a fast read, and it's just a lot, and it challenges the what if of Christianity. And a quick story is that a friend of mine read the book, and he came to me and he said, I loved it. I couldn't put it down. I was waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and reading it. But he said, I tell you, about a third of the way through the book, I was convinced that I was going to have to take you up before the elders of the church on charges of heresy. And I kind of pumped my fist. I pumped my fist because I thought, I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. I've written a good mystery novel, but I've also challenged some dearly held beliefs in a fictional setting.
Well, listen, Terry, I think that is the crutch of it all, man. That is something that is remarkably compelling, right? If indeed Paul had written such a retraction, imposed things that, listen, when it comes to Christianity, there is no denying the following that has been built over centuries now. What would such a retraction mean for this faith? And what would it do to those followers? And I think that is such a compelling question to really ponder, and one that I want to get to next. Now, of course, this is fictional, right? There's no way to prove any of this. There's speculation, and I got that. Well, I'm curious to know from your perspective, was it just a question that you wanted posed in people's minds? Was there a deeper conversation you wanted to be developed through this? Where do you think we would stand if that retraction actually were true and these things came to light?
Well, it's a great question. It's a great question, and certainly one that I struggled with when I read the book that I read back in the early '90s, because it made me nervous to suppose that there was this conspiracy theory out there that brought my own faith into question. And as I pondered the notion of a novel, I wanted to recreate that kind of tension that I felt, but not in a way that would really personally threaten anyone. I want people to read the book as a great adventure and as a great mystery novel. I hope it's great anyway, but I also want them to at least confront the notion, what if? Because I think we all have a basis. If we are people of faith, whether that is Christian, Jewish, Muslim, whatever, we all have a basis for our faith. And faith is one of those things that cannot be completely scientifically, empirically quantified. There is a place that we can get to through reason, through reading, through study, and then we have to make a decision. I'm going to move on in this direction, or I'm going to retreat, and I'm going to accept, or I'm not going to accept. And as people of the book, as those three major religions are all called, the book is important, and the veracity of what goes into biblical writings and the canon of Scripture, incredibly important. And if for some reason a manuscript comes to light or came to light, what would that do? And I again, I'm not trying to convince anyone either direction, but I want people to have to ask themselves, what is the basis of my faith? What would happen? And again, it's set in a fictional setting, so I'm not writing this as a theologian. There's a little bit of theology in the book. The theology comes out in dialogue mostly. It's not ponderous. The history in the book does not come across as ponderous. It's mostly in story and dialogue. But I love the notion that people come to me after having read the book and they said, I got a little nervous about that. What do you really believe? And so it opens a conversation, with the reader, and it's just a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I'm right there with you, people. And this is why this book needs to be added to your shelf. Remember, it's called The Lost Epistle by Terry Burnett. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's a lot of other places. While you're at it, and listen, trust me when I tell you, this book is going to keep you occupied. All right. Not only is it an amazing journey for you to embark upon, but like he said, like I've alluded to already, the conversations that are going to ensue are going to be just as compelling as the narrative itself. But once you've gotten through all of that, make sure you're checking back in frequently because Terry's got a sequel in development as well. Now, still in creation, right? So you're not able to pick it up just yet, but that's going to be one you want to add to your shelf as well because it is promising to be just as explosive. So make sure you check back in frequently. Terry, my next question that I want to get into, I'm curious to know, from a writing perspective, what would you say was, who would you say was the most challenging character to write?
I think there's a character in the book who is a sort of, and I called him earlier, a wild-eyed Protestant pastor, and he was the most challenging character to write simply because I struggled not to create a stereotype. When I set out writing this book, one of the things that occurred to me was that typically or often in the media, often in movies, often in television, often in books, Christian characters can come across as stereotypes, either as good or bad. The reality is all of us are complex.
Yeah.
And this character had an agenda, and other characters did too, but it was more difficult to create a character with a little bit of depth in that person. And actually that was the most difficult character. Most of the rest of the characters were easier to write because they were a little bit more complex and they were a little bit more real.
Yeah.
So that's how I would phrase that.
You know, Terry, as we close out, man, my final question, I think, is something very compelling. Because listen, it's not so black and white, and it's not so easy to answer. There are definitely areas of gray. I think there is something very interesting about the notion in your book, or there's this group, there's this secret society that is guarding the epistle, right? That believes that suppressing it is for the greater good, or potentially for the greater good. There might be, there may be other malicious thoughts behind it, but I think that it's compelling for the narrative, but it also is something that is very interesting to reality, into where we currently are, and really probably have been for the history of humanity. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there of whether it's from a governmental standpoint or a global standpoint, what have you, that there are these elite groups behind the scenes that have access to this information that the everyday person does not receive. They're not privy to. Well, there is something very interesting in that notion, and I want to now utilize that to my next question. And of course, hypothetical, but again, has real life circumstances. Well, Terry, I want to ask you, man, if you happen to find this lost epistle in real life, I'm curious to know, what would you do, man? Would you publish it for the masses? Would you burn it because you think it's better for that not to come to light? Where would you lie with regards to that information?
That's a great question. I don't know that I've ever actually thought about that in terms of my own discovery. I think I take the position that human beings are, or at least ought to be, smart enough to figure out their own destinies and their own lives of faith and their own perspectives. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that I would ever suppress something like that. I think part of the challenge of any discovery of an ancient manuscript is who is the real author. The fact that a manuscript exists may or may not, even with a name on it, even with a name attributed to it, may or may not actually have been written by that person.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge, but I do think that the world is okay figuring those hard questions out for themselves. I don't feel like I would need to guard the world against its own potential disaster.
Well, listen, Terry, I'm right there with you, man. I believe in our freedom to decide for ourselves. But I like, as I mentioned, it is something that I think is compelling, and it's something that isn't so black and white, right? I mean, just from a standpoint of burying the truth. Sometimes, listen, I'll just say from a very minuscule point, as a parent myself, I tell you, man, there are moments I have to lie to my children, Terry, and I'll be the first one to tell you, man. Sometimes if I give them a snack, I might have to lie and say that's the last cookie, because I can't have them eating a whole thing of cookies, because they'll do it if they want to, right? So sometimes there are those areas of gray where maybe burying the truth is for the benefit. But I don't know, right? I mean, where is that line drawn? That is something remarkably compelling. People, I'm telling you, I could sit here, I could talk to Terry for hours, man. I'm at the edge of my seat, but the onus is on you. You all know where you got to go. I'm going to say it again. It's Amazon. It's Barnes & Noble. The book is called The Lost Epistle. Make sure to check back in frequently. As I mentioned, there's a sequel currently in creation that you're going to want to catch the moment it becomes available. Trust me when I tell you, whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or you just love a twist that could potentially rewrite history, This book, The Lost Epistle, will leave you questioning everything. It's not going to tell you what to believe. It's going to leave it open-ended and allow you to have the conversation for yourself. So if you're ready to potentially risk the truth, and dive in. All right, this is a book for you. Head on over and pick it up. Terry, this has been a true pleasure, man. An absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Benji, thank you so much. Fantastic job. You captured the essence of the book exactly, and I'm deeply appreciative.